Commission meeting for the Village of Vernon Hills. We need to start with a roll call.
Chairman Morris.
Here.
Mr. Baloo.
Present.
Ms. Cotton.
Here.
Mr. Hesner.
Here.
Mr. Heidner.
Here.
Ms. Zhao.
Here.
Mr. Gorog. We have a quorum.
Okay. There's no public hearings tonight, but there are two development review. First being case, believe it or not, 12-01, a petition filed to amend the approved building elevations for property formerly known as Blockbuster Video Verizon Wireless, located at 701 North Milwaukee Avenue, Suite 366 in River Tree. And who's going to speak for the petitioner?
Chuck Chavez with Payway Asian Diner.
Okay, the only real rule we have is you have to speak either at the microphone connected to the desk, or if you decide to stray from the handheld one.
Okay, great.
Payway.
Yep.
And maybe to introduce them both, since they're both tied together.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Since you know them both? Okay, yeah.
So I don't know if you want to do the second topic in case 1202, or you want to keep them separate.
We have to vote on them separate, don't we?
Right,
So is it easier to do it this way then?
Well, I think it's going to overlap.
Okay, why don't we do this then, to make it easy? The other matter before the Commission for Development Review is case 12-02, which is also approval to amend the final approved site and landscaping plans for the building elevations, excluding Suite 366, which is the proposed Payway site for the property formerly known as Blockbuster Video Verizon Wireless. So why don't we see who's going to speak on that one?
John Jacobs with Becker Architects.
Joel Rosenstein on behalf of River Tree Venture LLC.
Okay. So I don't know, how's the best way to talk about what you're doing there?
Well, why don't I start? Obviously represent the tenant. Payway Asian Diner is a wholly owned subsidiary of P.F. Chang's China Bistro. We have approximately 175 Payway Asian Diner restaurants open across the United States, and approximately 202 or 3 P.F. Chang's China Bistro across, struggling with which one opened last and what number that is, across the United States. We have been very excited about this project and have been working on it for quite some time, as John will attest to, and we're excited to be here and talk to you about our project and kind of look at what we're aiming to do. Probably the best place to start is the overall site plan.
Remember, you need the microphone if you leave.
The building was Blockbuster and it's been vacant for some time, and we've been working with the landlord on splitting that space up and coming up with a layout both for the tenant spaces and our restaurant that works, and also modifying the facade to improve the existing condition, highlight the entry, and kind of create an attractive exterior, as opposed to without abandoning the existing architecture wholly. Here is the entire building and how we planned on splitting things up. In the southwest quadrant being our space, with 2 tenant spaces split by a corridor that goes to the rear of the building, where you see the new trash enclosure that will service all 3 tenants. Here's our floor plan, and Payway, to back up to Payway a little bit, it's a fast casual concept, meaning you order food at a counter, you sit down and we bring you the food. It's not, everything is cooked fresh, everything's fresh cooked to order. However, everything is cooked in woks, and the temperature of those woks allows the food to be cooked very quickly. So while it's not fast food that's pre-made, it's fresh, and if it sits in that wok for 8-9 minutes, it's burnt. So you know, the food comes off fairly quickly, and we're able to serve guests quickly, but it's all fresh, cooked to order. You can customize, you can do however you want with all the various dishes that we have. We have two primary entries. The main entry being where the dine-in guests come in, where the double door is, right there. They queue up along the window in which you see our 3 menu boards right there. They're electronic menu boards. And then they are served by the 2 cash registers there and there. And they then go and get their beverage over here if they want soda or tea. And then we also serve beer and wine, which would be from, which should only be served to them at the, they have to get it at the counter, which is why it's such a small percentage of sales. It's roughly 2% of sales, a very small percent. We do have, the takeaway entry right there is for takeaway guests. We have online ordering that we do. We have not proposed curbside service here, but maybe something for the future to consider. But we get phone-in orders, online orders, and people can walk in, order their food at those 2 registers right there, and then leave out what we'll call the takeaway door right there. The exit on the south side of the building is an emergency. That's simply an emergency exit to meet the required exiting separation. We have a mix of soft seating. You'll see a banquette along the back side of those menu boards with some loose seating, as well as some booths along the south wall there. And we'll have some decorative lamps on the inside there with a very modern interior with brick walls and some really neat artwork and so forth. And the cook line, it's an exhibition cook line, so the guests in the dining room can see everybody preparing the food, you know, seeing it all done fresh. It's very exciting, lots of flame and so forth coming out of the woks. But that's, in a nutshell, the layout. This thanks. And let me
Grab next to it.
can I pass this around. What we
Hold them down.
You know, originally Blockbuster's entry was on the somewhat center of the south side of the building, and with our entry being in the location right here on the west side of the main entry, we wanted to highlight that and kind of create some interest on that corner that wasn't currently there. So what we did is we created this little tower element, living within the restrictions of the existing covenants with Inland to the maximum height. But we created some metal awnings, brought in a new tile that kind of meshed with the existing brick and the ephes that's there, and we're replacing all the storefront, fixing some of those pieces are a little bit old and so forth. So that was kind of the gist of what we're doing. The materials board that I passed around, I'm not 100% sure that brick piece is exactly representative of the brick that's there, but it's existing, and we tried to keep it in line with what's there. But I think that's all that I have. Would love to answer any questions that you have about Payway or about, you know, what we've shown, and we can talk about the rest of the piece as well.
What is the maximum number of employees you expect at one time?
Oh gosh, it varies from store to store, and all is based on sales, and the sales vary pretty substantially. But I'd say 12 to 15 is a guess.
Okay. And how many employees overall do you think this facility will have?
Oh, generally they're in the 55 to 60 range.
Where are your other locations in this area?
In Chicago, we have one in Logan Square in the city at the corner of Logan and Elston. We have one in the Willowbrook Town Center in Willowbrook. We have one in Randhurst Mall in Mount Prospect. And one is under construction in Streeterville in downtown.
And are you planning any other expansion in, this area?
Absolutely. We don't have any grand plans of doing like 50 restaurants. We own every single restaurant. We do not franchise. We don't put them, 2 feet apart. We want to have them stand on their own. We would like to eventually, fill in through the North Shore and someday be up in Milwaukee even. That's a little bit a ways probably, but we're looking at a site in Gurnee. We're looking in Evanston. We're looking in more sites in Chicago, Naperville, etc.
Question on, you gave us these lovely photos of showing the interior of the
Yeah.
restaurant. Are we going to get one of these lovely interiors, or?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing.
Okay, so it's gonna be the same, basically
Yeah.
the same colors?
Correct.
things like that?
Those lanterns that you see in that picture right there, are right along, they're above those booths on the south side. So that picture is a view in another restaurant looking that direction.
So you use a lot of the same color patterns for all of the restaurants?
Not all of them, but a majority of them, yes. Every so often, we change the interiors. We'll try to lift things up. Our chief executive and chairman, for both concepts, I do both P.F. Chang's and Pei Wei Asian Diner. He's constantly raising the bar, and every couple of years I'll turn around and say, can we do this better? Can we do a nicer, how can we make this stand out for our guests? And we're actually remodeling some of our older restaurants with the interior an interior similar to what you're looking at. All the ones in Chicago have that.
Now, with word to your exterior, I really like what you have here.
That's Logan and Elston.
Yeah, I noticed that for the Vernon Hills location, is it this one that you're going to be using? on the
Correct,
tower?
correct.
Well, I don't know. You have white lettering for your name. Is it going to be enough to pop off so that?
Oh, yeah,
anyone-
we've done that,
Yeah.
maybe not exactly like that, but we have that in that same colored backgrounds in a number of locations.
And there's enough of a contrast.
Yeah, we have a lot in Florida. For whatever reason, they look very like light colored backgrounds,
Okay.
besides the bright orange and pink colors.
Your door to the north, I guess it would be. I think you described it as your takeout door.
Yes.
People can go in there?
Correct.
Is there a sign on that door that says that that's the takeout entrance, or?
We typically have a little vinyl on the door that will say takeaway, and guests figure it out very quickly. But if you came in that door, you could, walk around to and go to the dine-in guests. We try to make sure that our guests don't feel trying to find another word for stupid. We want to make sure that if a guest comes in the wrong door, we take care of them, because if we don't, they won't come back. And so our goal as a company, our philosophy is to make our guests enjoy their experience and want to come back time and time again. And we want to repeat that and continue with that same level of service.
It's difficult to tell from the drawing we have, but can you describe the handicap entrance? How the handicap would enter the facility, the parking area? Looks like the handicap parking is off from where your doorway is.
Yeah, I think that a bit. Yeah. The handicap parking spaces are right there in front of the building, on the west side of the building, basically, and both entries are accessible. We provide accessible seating in the dining room.
I guess I'm asking where the depression is in the curb
Oh.
there, so that they can access the sidewalk.
I could answer that. As the building owner's architect, we're responsible for those components, and what we're, right now, the two handicap spaces that are, accessible spaces that are on the, yes, they're at either end on the west side there, and we're gonna combine the two of them and have one depressed ramp in between the two handicap spots there that are in the middle of that band on the west side of the building now.
So they'll be entering more or less where the carryout door is?
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. Well, they'll be at least entering the elevated curb area there, whether or not they go in the takeout door or head on down to the main doors is
Your
optional.
depressed curb will be
You
approximately.
need to use the microphone.
I'm sorry. Your depressed curb will be
You still need
approximately
to use the
here.
microphone.
This one.
Make sure.
Your depressed curb will be approximately here, centered between the two handicap spaces. Currently, we have ramps that extend out into the parking lot at this end and this end, allowing the handicap spaces here and here. We felt this would just be a better, more accommodating entrance.
And that doesn't meet code anymore, that style of ramp that we've got in the parking lot now.
So you said they're sharing one depressed
Yes.
area in the curb. How are they gonna do that? Because you've got two spaces there, and,
I believe we can depress all the way across
oh, you're gonna
here.
go all the way across to
Yeah.
depressed curb? Okay.
We'll see what the engineers come up with in their final detail, but my understanding is that we would just depress the entire area.
How many seats are you?
70.
Okay. And you said at any given time you have approximately, or at least at peak times, 12 to 15 employees?
Correct.
Okay. How many spaces are in this outlet?
There's existing, I believe there's 49 right now. We are, yes, and that number is remaining for the new plan, because we had to add another accessible space, but that one we added into an area that was not a parking space right now. So we've got a total of 49.
All right, okay, this is really my question. I've been to your location in Randhurst, and maybe just I was there, it was busy those days, but it's, the few times I've been there, it's always been very well received and very crowded. Okay. This is a historically, first off, difficult lot to get in and out of because of the elevations to get off the ring road, especially on the south side. And the north side's not that much better, but it is somewhat better. My question is really this. Putting aside for a moment what I know, because I learned this evening, the actual annexation agreement says with respect to the requirement for parking and the like, is this sufficiently parked for your operation? Now, I know you're going to tell, you have to tell me yes, but then you have to explain why, because I know you're going to say yes, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
Correct. Well, actually, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 or 4 locations that actually have similar parking numbers within, say, 4 or 5 spaces that include a Starbucks, and a Subway next to them in similar sized buildings. And we, would we like to have another, 10, 15 spaces? Sure. But we believe, based on our experience and in having done that in similar situations across the country, that we can do it. One of those particular restaurants is in Phoenix, in close proximity to our corporate office. And it's one particular that has Starbucks, and that one has a wine bar there that's it does business at lunch as well. And that particular store does $55,000 a week in sales with 52 spaces, I believe they have, 50 or 52, with the Starbucks. And the other 2 users we discussed were they're limited or weren't going to be restaurants. So.
Our lease covenants pretty much preclude us from putting any other full-service restaurant, any other, or takeout. I think we could potentially do a donut shop or a coffee shop, and that's about it.
Okay. Okay, what efforts have been made, and maybe this isn't really to you, it's really to the ownership of the lot, regarding a cross easement for parking, at least for employees, if not for everyone else?
We've approached Inland Realty, who's the center operator for River Tree Court. They've indicated a willingness to grant us a non-exclusive easement for
Right.
employee parking if we should need it for future tenants. For this application, we haven't required it, and based on the ratios, we don't believe it'll be needed. We do expect that the market conditions would prevail, and that if this location, if the Payway is using a predominant number of the spaces, we'll need to get that easement in place to lease the remainder of the building.
Okay, unless and until, we use the word until, because that's more optimistic, the other two spaces are leased and therefore are operational. Is there an issue with respect to Payway and I guess the owner having the employees not park along either which would be the west frontage or the, I suppose,
think
the south frontage, more on the back of the building where there's nothing?
I think without having discussed it, we would require employee parking along here.
Right.
In this area.
Okay. Okay. Now, is there any discussion, because we always talk about this with this center and the one across the street, because of the extreme elevation change into some of these lots, to do anything to get in and out?
I can't raise the building, and I can't lower the building, I can't raise the ring road.
I understand that.
When we do parking lot maintenance, though, we typically do some undercutting rather than simply patching over, which helps prevent the berms. When I do sewer work and curb repairs, I can certainly look at tapering that and perhaps changing some of the diversifying the change in grade. Right now, the parking lot's in fairly good condition, except for this one entrance through here. You know, I'd certainly look to try and make it more user-friendly when we regrade it.
Because at least in the olden days, when people rented, I guess VHSs originally, then DVDs from Blockbuster, those initial spaces along that side were near impossible and probably frightening to try to use, because you couldn't see people pulling in and out, nor yourself.
I've witnessed it. I've been there on some of those slippery days, and it's
Right.
it's a pretty steep grade. It's not ideal. We agree. Unfortunately, we're somewhat limited in what we can do. We're very diligent with the snow removal,
I understand.
and we try not to seal coat too much because it only makes it more slippery. But we have to maintain it.
I have a question regarding one of those other locations you're talking about where your corporate headquarters is in Phoenix. Did you say Phoenix?
Yes, it's Scottsdale.
Scottsdale?
Yeah.
Is it a suburban area or is it more urban?
The one I'm speaking of is on the corner of 7th Avenue and McDowell. It is just northwest of downtown. Very urban and actually gets people in from downtown. I personally wouldn't do that if I officed in downtown, but having been there at lunch, there are people coming from downtown in that particular restaurant. It's also a much larger restaurant than this particular location.
I
I
thought
think
you
we-
said that it was 55 seats.
No, 55, 50 or 52 parking spaces.
50 or 52.
That particular location has, I believe, nearly 90 seats. I had to go back and check honestly, but it's got a large patio that's covered on the north side of the building, and inside it has at least, I think it had 82 or 84 seats, something like that.
But there's an opportunity for pedestrian traffic there.
There actually is not, because it's disconnected from downtown. You'd have to walk across the 10 freeway, which is obviously the interstate. There, I don't see, honestly, in that part of town is really an interesting, it's unusual in that, similar to, say, Los Angeles as an example, where you have a very nice area very close to very not so nice areas. And if you were to go west on McDowell, or if you were to read police reports, there's murders, just a couple of blocks one other way, but yet there's mansions and million-dollar homes right in close proximity to that. That's on the intersection of 4 historic neighborhoods on all 4 quadrants, but just a little bit to the west gets pretty nasty, to be perfectly honest, and a little bit to, it's downtown. Downtown Phoenix is not like Chicago, in any way.
I guess where my question is, these centers are typically, they're vehicular destinations.
Correct.
You know, and how are you able to put 70 people into this restaurant?
Well,
With the amount, I mean, they're gonna park,
Well, first of all,
By
most
ways
of our
of way.
employees are young, and most of them don't drive. Most of them are getting rides, or they're taking the bus, or some form of public transportation. A lot of our guests come in groups of as many as 6 or 8, or, you know, we have 12 people in groups in restaurant at the time. And honestly, you have 70 seats, but the orientation is designed to try to maximize those seats, but when you have a 4-top, you don't always have 4 people at that table, and usually groups come together as a general statement.
I would think that maybe your answer might have been quick in and out, you know, type of.
And that is true. The speed of service is very quick. 30 minutes in a payway is a long time. You're meaning to be there. If you were to sit down, eat your food, walk in, sit down, eat your food, you could be out in 20 minutes, depending on how quickly you eat. It's not a hour-long, wait service sort of restaurant.
I must linger.
If I could help alleviate some of the parking concerns, we've done calculations on how many spaces will be needed for this site when the whole building is filled up. And we're going to fall somewhere between 10 and 20 spaces short, depending on if it's retail or restaurant, how many seats, if it's a restaurant, and so forth. The landlord, Joel, has gotten an agreement from Inland to allow us to lease some of those parking spaces off-site, and I'll let the landlord and the tenant address this issue, but my understanding is that employees will be the ones that will be using those parking spaces off-site in that scenario.
In conjunction with this request, we've submitted all the same materials to Inland Realty. And at one point through the review process, we thought we may need as many 30 parking spaces off-site just for this tenant. Upon review of the development agreement that I think you referenced earlier, we found that the number is actually considerably less. And by code, if we had typical retail users such as clothing or mattress stores, we wouldn't need any off-site parking. Anticipating that we may have some untypical uses down the road and that we may simply need it for practical purposes, we've asked that if Inland would agree to grant us a non-exclusive use of some of the parking in the rest of the center. And they reviewed all their leases to make sure there were no prohibitions, found that it was not a problem, and they would be willing to do so providing we would compensate them fairly for the pro rata cost of those spaces. Part of the equation is that we also own River Tree 5 outlot, which is occupied by bedding experts, where we have approximately 20 extra parking spaces. So with some shifting and cross easements, it's all very feasible. At this point, Inland has agreed to consider any future request and has indicated that there'd be no problem with it.
Anybody else? So John, our review for this in particular is, it's the building elevation specifically?
Correct. For the payway
For the payway.
petition, yes. Now, I don't know if you want to continue on with the
Maybe we should hear what the
remainder.
rest of the building's gonna look like, because it is one building.
As the architect for the building owner, we were responsible for the re-subdivision of the space, which I think we've already talked about in the payway plan. In addition to that, we are doing an enlarged dumpster enclosure to help accommodate payway's additional refuse needs. We are also making minor repairs throughout the parking lot per the city engineer's recommendations. And lastly, we're doing a additional landscaping. And put up the landscaping plan. The elevation that we have over there indicates the building in its entirety and shows the new dumpster enclosure. Materials of the enclosure will be brick and stone to match existing.
You know, it's interesting, you look at the building as a whole, and I've brought this up with John before, but it's easy to note on this elevation which part of this is not like the rest of it. It's very evident. And it's very evident that this is the next in tenant. You know, it's the one that's going in now. So when the future tenants start moving into this building, are you going to consider them at every opportunity to show some kind of feature, you know, because this right now, although somewhat striking in its minimal nature, it's not that big, you know. You're kind of understating it because it's not taller than the rest of the building, but it is different. And I know in reality that it's not going to appear as strikingly different as it does in the rendering, but it's you know, it's modern, it's simple, it's actually very tasteful, but it is very different from the rest of the building. And I guess my question isn't necessarily about this particular piece, it's about moving forward with future tenants. If you're going to introduce elements like that possibly for other future tenants.
Yeah, our intention is that future tenants will have their own tower and canopy needs. And at one point we thought, well, let's make everything match the Payway look, and it was like, no, that probably will have to be redone for a future tenant. So yeah, our plan right now is to leave the remaining gable tower pieces alone, and when and if future tenants come in, they
And change
will.
those.
Yes, but also the idea that it won't be completely helter-skelter, that there'll have to be some consistency. If Payway's tower is flat and it's at 20 feet, you know, we probably want to do that with future tower for another tenant. Maybe their canopy is going to be a little different. Obviously, their signage will be different.
I guess the word of caution is this. Moving forward, don't make it Disney. You know, it's not, it's never gonna work, although some people do like that. Disney does it well, but Disney doesn't play there. So maybe a series of tasteful entrances that have images, you know, of their new tenants, you know, something that's for them, but different from maybe, well, definitely different from Payway, but different from this gable look as you move into developing this out.
We're a little hamstringed here. We don't know who our next tenants will be, and we don't know if they're gonna want the entry on the north or the south, or which door they're gonna wanna use. There's multiple entrances to each of these spaces. We'd be remiss in showing you a building with a lot of architectural features that then don't materialize. Depending on who the new tenant is, we expect they're gonna want certain identity features, whether it be canopies or EFIS facade over by their entry, something. I don't expect it's gonna be nearly as detailed or ornate as Payway's is.
Well, because this is entertainment, and the
Right.
others
More
might not
typical.
be entertainment.
Exactly. I don't wanna try and make this look like three separate buildings that have been attached to each other with a party wall. I think that we're really going to have more continuity throughout the space. I don't think what Payway's doing is that drastically different in terms of, we can't go above 20 feet, and Lynn won't let us. We couldn't even pick up 2 inches. So we're somewhat limited in the height on any of the gables.
It's different.
It is,
It's supposed to be different.
yes. it
Okay,
is,
I get that.
Yes,
But it's way different than the rest of the building right now.
yes.
And all I'm going to suggest is, as you move forward, introduce more different elements so that this doesn't look like an alien moving forward.
I expect we'll be doing something that covers some of the brick columns and giving more definition of where the storefront, or where the entry is for future tenants. I'm not sure how or in what material, but I expect that we would be doing something for them.
John, is this building limited to 3 users?
No, it is not.
So are we looking at and being asked to approve elevations that are 3-user elevations, or that you could put a user wherever you could put a door cutout? In other words, what are we really looking to approve then, when you get away from just the payway space, which we know is there?
We're only looking for the use, for 3 uses. Our restrictive covenants with Inland only provided for 2 uses, and they've agreed to allow the 3rd use.
Okay.
From the village's zoning perspective, however, they could put 4 or 5 users within the existing structure. And what you're asked to do tonight is payway,
Right.
the elevation, and then on the second, for the balance of the
Right.
building, it's the a garbage enclosure or the trash enclosure and that. There's some minor work on the north elevation, of filling in of a garage door and the like, with a new door, storefront door, and then the landscaping
We're
plan.
actually restoring the north elevation to its original design, by
Yep.
removing Ameritex.
Well, I guess it's really the question, if you look at the north elevation, there are at least 4 doors there. So are we approving it with 4 doors on it that you could then separate it in theoretically 4 different spaces?
Well, again, from the zoning perspective, you could, from the covenant perspective, you couldn't. The anticipation is that both of those doors access the same space.
That's
It's
correct.
an in and an out, or however you want to do it, so.
Okay.
So in essence, it's
We
2.
could break, the
Right.
second set of doors that you're looking at to the east side of the north elevation is where there's currently a garage door, an overhead door,
Mhm.
from back in the days when people actually had car phones.
Right.
We want to remove those at some point, we expect, and our plan is that it was originally designed with 2 storefront doors and entries, and that's possibly going back in. I think, that's what Verizon has paid to replace, and what's on hand to be installed.
Okay.
Ultimately, we'll probably be changing it with storefront or something else in one of the places.
Well, are the other members of the commission comfortable with, I guess, just the representation that the covenants or the restrictions on the property are limited to 3 users now, without our making that a condition of our facade, or our elevation approval?
Say that again.
Well, I mean, we're being told that, based upon the restrictive covenants on this piece of property, that it's limited originally to 2, but now I guess there's agreement for 3 users. However, in looking at the elevation, it wouldn't take much dreaming to figure out how you could put more users, especially on the north side of the building. And by what we hear under our zoning ordinance and under the annexation agreement, we couldn't stop those additional users. So are we approving something without a condition that we could end up with a building with more than 2 additional users in it? Or do we need a condition of the approval of this that it's only gonna have 2 users?
I don't know if it would be to the detriment of this building if it had more than 2 additional users.
That's really the question.
Yeah, I don't, my personal opinion is that I don't think it would be detrimental. The spaces would be smaller, be for what is appropriate for that space, but I don't know if the quantity of users should be limited.
Well, but didn't we talk in our overlay district that we wanted certain sizes users?
No, it was, the minimum size that the overlay district applied to, building size was 20,000 square feet. Anything below that, we didn't regulate. So in this case, that the overlay provisions don't apply to this building.
I guess from my standpoint, I would have a personal issue that if it becomes a substantially greater multi-user building and it becomes a mini strip mall, especially on the north side.
That's what you're getting to.
Yeah, that's really, I guess, my concern is. But I'm hearing that that's not the intention, so I'm wondering from the commission standpoint, is it something that we would want, and I'm asking for, views, to be a condition, or we just take it that that's what the restrictive covenant says before we approve this facade?
I haven't
John?
seen the conditions or the covenant, so I I
Can't
can't
comment, right.
comment
I
on it.
understand.
So, I mean, but I guess the question would be for the petitioners.
From a petitioner standpoint, it's 6 1/2 dozen to me. We can produce evidence of the covenants to satisfy the commission, or you can, if you want to
Gotcha.
approval, subject to only 3 users on the parcel.
When it sounds like the covenants can be changed without any input from us anyhow, so. Just because it's 3 right now, it was 2 just a
point.
little while ago.
Good point. Anybody else?
So, you mean on anything? Or
Well,
with
anything, I
that
guess,
particular
sure, anything at all.
On your landscape plan, can you
Yes.
point out where the Norway spruces were going? I couldn't, I found 3, but I couldn't find the others. And there's nothing, are they replacements or are they brand new?
I think we,
The Norway spruce is intended to be new. I'm trying to figure out
It's like
where.
there's 3 by the trash enclosure there, yeah.
Is that the 6 right here, Joel?
yeah, this may be the Norway spruces, I believe here. And these are existing, these are the new.
You need the microphone?
I believe these are the 6 new 8-foot Norway spruces, and these are 3 existing Norway spruce.
I gotcha.
That's intended to address the new dumpster enclosure.
And what was the old dumpster? What was?
It's much smaller. It really only fit 1.5 3-yard dumpsters, and
Is that what the boxes are in their various dumpsters?
Yes.
that's correct. The existing one is roughly in the location of where the new is, just much smaller.
And where it says loading, that's where the dumpsters would be emptied, the area.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else?
And your access from the restaurant to the dumpster is internal, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that
Come
new?
through here. Yes.
That's a
Yep.
new corridor, yes.
I did have one question regarding that corridor. Did I see well, first of all, there are no doors to the surrounding spaces yet. Is that going to be that's going to be a common corridor for other spaces, correct?
No, it's currently, for this tenant's exclusive use for ingress and egress.
Currently?
Currently. If we've got a second plan that we're not putting forward at this time that involved a corridor moving to the north and connecting to one of these 2 in the event we wanted to subdivide the building east and west.
But I guess my question is, are other potential tenants going to be accessing that corridor?
Our intention is no. One of the concerns I have is from a safety standpoint that tenants aren't going to want other tenants to come into their space through the back door, and so doors may be locked from the corridor side to go into another tenant space, and in the event that people leave in an emergency to egress out into that, if it was a common service corridor, you really only have one way out now. It's a one-way corridor.
And there's no doors to the restaurant? It's just open
That's correct.
to the kitchen anyway?
And given that where the other 2 spaces, tenant spaces lay out, it's so easy for them to access the back area and the dumpsters and the service and loading and so forth, that it's really not necessary for them to use that corridor.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Anything you'd like to add on behalf of Payway?
Thank you for your time.
Okay, as you may or may not know, we have a standing motion to recommend approval that we then vote on. This evening's motion would be to recommend approval to amend the approved building elevations for 701 North Milwaukee Avenue, Suite 366, to allow Payway Asian Diner subject to the following conditions. A, compliance with the plans prepared by Ideation Design Group entitled Payway Asian Diner River Tree Court Outbuilding, consisting of pages C1, SP, A1, A1.1, A2, A2.1, I don't know why I'm doing this, 2.2, A3, etc. B, the expansion of the trash enclosure is set forth in the case number 1202 shall be completed prior to issuance of any certificate of occupancy. I suppose that's assuming that it gets approved. C, compliance with all other ordinances and standards of the village except as may otherwise be provided. We need a second for that? Okay, Jerry seconded. Any discussion? Okay. My only comment is based upon your facility in Randhurst, it's too bad you can't have an outdoor dining area.
Can I
Sure.
We would have liked to. Unfortunately, it would have come at the cost of parking. So,
Okay. Any other comments? And we can call the question.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yep.
Mr. Heidner?
Yes.
Ms. Zhao?
Yes.
Okay. That passes. Next, we have the motion to recommend approval to amend the final site plan and landscaping plan and building elevations, excluding Suite 366, for the building formerly known as Blockbuster Video Verizon Wireless, subject to the following conditions: compliance with the plans prepared by Becker Architects Limited, entitled River Tree Court Outbuilding. General compliance with landscape plan prepared by Becker Architects Limited, entitled River Tree Court Outbuilding, consisting of page L100 and dated September 12, 2012, subject to compliance with the village landscape ordinance and approval by the village landscape technician. C, the expansion of the trash enclosure as set forth in the plans shall be completed prior to issuance of any certificate of occupancy, and that's, I guess, for the entire building. D, compliance with all ordinances and standards of the village except as may otherwise be provided. I think the other two things we talked about is E, you would have continued discussions with Inland Realty, the center's owner, regarding cross easements for parking should that needs arise as identified by village staff or your tenants. And I guess then F, you've agreed that it would be subject to 2 users in the building in addition to Payway as a condition of the approval. We need a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that one? Okay, we need a vote.
Ms. Zhao?
Yes.
Mr. Heidner?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yep.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't ask you, when do you open?
as soon as possible.
I knew that answer.
Approximately 4 months after we get a building permit, so.
All right,
Great.
okay, thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
You guys can leave all those boards if you want. No, leave that too.
I'll leave that too. Okay. Next, we have the discussion of the comprehensive land use plan, update number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are a few years behind in terms of getting our overall update going, and that's my fault, so I apologize. In your packet tonight is a bound document of draft 1 that is a compilation of some work by the staff, but primarily work from the representatives from Rolfe Campbell and Associates. Campbell's office was employed by the village to assist in moving this project forward. As you've seen in the past, the document is a policy document, and it has been used in the past as a guideline for physical development of the community, with some guidelines associated with that. So this is the plan that you have here is typical of what we have done in the past. What you see in your packet tonight is a series of updates. It reflects what has gone on. There are some additional sections or guidelines that have been added, and then an additional section with regards to sustainability. So with that, I'll turn it over to Al and Jeremiah, who can walk you through the changes. We can have a discussion if you have changes that you'd like to make or additions. We'd love to have them. And then what we'll do at the end of this discussion is, if we've come far enough for you all, we'll talk about having a public hearing on it at some point within the next 60 days or so to roll this document out to the public and take any further comments and then look at wrapping it up as soon after that as possible. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alan Jeremiah.
Thank you.
Hey,
Wait,
Alan,
wait.
you gotta come up here.
Or at least use the handheld.
You want the handle? Sorry, we didn't rehearse this.
It doesn't look it.
These exhibits are basically the same as you have in the package, just if you want to measure something, we'll be able to throw a scale on some of these. Right. We've been working primarily with John on updating the text, and we've gone back and forth with different ideas. We've worked with your village before on the update of the comprehensive plan, and you have, as you note in the introduction, you've really built on every single plan you've had since 1974. So we weren't looking to reinvent the wheel. If things were valid in the previous plan, then we continued them.
Do me a favor, state your name for the record and who you're with. Sorry.
My name's Al Maiden. I'm Director of Community Development for Rolfe Campbell and Associates, a division of Manhard Engineering. And with me is Jeremiah Yiksavich, one of our senior planners. With the text, as I said, we didn't make major changes unless we felt there was something that needed to be updated. We have also been working with your village staff in regard to updating several of the maps that were in the document. And we've also, as we read the text, there were references to areas that we generally understood where they were because we're familiar with the community, but yet we were looking at it, if there's individuals that may be reviewing it from, say, other areas, and you have economic development opportunities, we want to make sure that it would be very clear to them where they were at. So we tried to work with your village staff on updating several of your GIS maps. Now, you do notice that those maps are dated, well, some are dated in January, some are dated back as late as November. We have had some additional comments on some updates that all of the maps have not been completed. Basically, they're intact, but if you have comments, we'd love to hear those, and we'll work with your village staff on updating those maps. Jeremiah, do you want to go through some of the specific areas that were changed?
Thanks, Al. Basically, as John had stated earlier, a lot of the revisions are just updates to what has occurred since the last update of this plan. But the more specific issues that we have kind of addressed with this initial draft are the Cuneo mansion and its potential for multifamily development. We've added some language and text to that, and that's on page 11 and page 12 with respect to the potential development or redevelopment of that site, with some specific ideas on how maybe that can be addressed in the future as kind of a holistic development, and how maybe the village would like to look at that in the future, and how they would like to see it developed in the future in terms of not only that site but the surrounding land uses as well. The other big thing that we kind of added as a modernization of this plan is the sustainability section, which is pretty extensive, for adding goals for the village for bringing itself up to date with the modern ways of addressing growth management and sustainability, and that starts on page 20, with the major bulk section being the sustainability goals and objectives on page 22. And then finally, the other areas that we were kind of looking for information from and ideas from on the Plan Commission that were on kind of at the staff level in the initial discussion phase would be the metro station area, on what the village would like to see in the future from the development or non-development of that area. as well as the northeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Route 60. What are the ideas would the Plan Commission at this time see as potentially viable for the development of that site in the future going forward, and its long-term role in the village? And so those are the major kind of three issues that we have seen as being, or sorry, major four issues we've seen as really need to be addressed with this update. Are those four things would be the multifamily development section, the Cuneo Mansion would be combined with that, sustainability, the metro station area, and the northeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Route 60.
And I'll follow up with a few comments. With regards to the Cuneo Museum site, this section is put in here in response to a development, a discussion that Cuneo has had, and when I say Cuneo, that means Loyola University has had with regards to potential development of a portion of the northern half of that lot, of that site, for residential purposes. The issue there is one of, and we'll go back to the term sustainability. In this case, it's to be able to sustain the museum and over a long period of time. And what has occurred within the past 18 months or so is that John Cuneo Jr. had donated that property to Loyola. Loyola has been charged with maintenance of the property and care of the museum and the like, and what needs to occur there is creating some funding mechanism by which the grounds and the museum itself can be maintained, and in the museum's case, repaired and restored back to its original condition. And as a part of the way of doing this, Loyola is looking at a possibility of selling off a portion of that site to a developer. Our understanding is that there is consideration for multifamily development on the site, and what we thought was appropriate, or not appropriate, but important, was to, in advance of that, get down some type of guidelines for further development of that site if in fact it does move forward in that direction. And that's why you'll see the 7 needs, for lack of a better term, that a developer or the proposed development would need to address as a part of that future design of a residential project on that property. Secondly, with regards to sustainability, this is the first time we've ever addressed sustainability per se in this plan, and generally speaking, in any substantial way with regards to any village documents. And what you'll see here is a fairly comprehensive approach to try to address where we go in the future with everything from, zoning and architectural design to how the village practices certain activities that we do, capital improvements, capital equipment acquisition, and those types of things. So that's why you see some of the things that you see documented in the goals that we have set forth internally here. And then finally, with regards to what we call the Metro Triangle, that's the property on 45. The village, over a series of years early in the 2000s, acquired all but 2 properties, actually 3 properties if you want to separate the synagogue out, within this triangle. We used the south portion, which was known as the Cordeaux property, which was south of the existing station. We acquired that to allow for the expansion and what is now today the current metro station itself with the expanded parking. You have Martin and Associates, which is north of there, who runs their business operations out of there, along with the synagogue, which they recently acquired and has converted that into an office. We then own the next 3 parcels, and then there's one additional residential parcel that's currently for sale, known as the Lens property. It's a very small parcel. We have not acquired that as of yet, but may do so in the future, either us or somebody who we may work with. And then finally, there's the triangle piece of property north of Lens that goes into the intersection of Deer Path and 45. This triangle was addressed as a part of a corridor study that Lakota did a number of years ago, but it was really geared towards what potential development could spin off associated with the train or with the commuter station and the like. And the question is that appropriate in this time? So I don't have a lot of direction for you right now. I mean, we're maintaining it as open space, and I think, in the current economic conditions and climate, that'll continue on into the future. But I think we've recognized that some kind of guidelines for development on that, maybe similar to what we're suggesting on the Loyola Cuneo site, may be appropriate in this case without necessarily developing a specific land plan. May be appropriate here. So, and then finally on the northeast corner of 60 in Milwaukee, we've had discussions about that over the years. The previous plans have identified that as the crown jewel in the development, the retail development of the village. In the past, discussions have occurred, and it's been documented about hotel and banquet facility, retail, commercial, those types of things. It's generally our sense, based on land value, and again, current economic climate, and based on what we've heard in the past from the larger landowners here in town, that property going strictly commercial probably is not viable now. So that's why you'll see language included in the plan that talks about a mixed use development. And when I talk about mixed, that does consider a residential component being added to that location. So again, that's why you see some of the language that's included here. We don't have any numbers. I mean, I've seen development plans off and on over a number of years that had, residential towers and 400,000 or 500,000 square feet of retail and the like, because the property values were $1 million an acre. That may not be the case now in terms of value, but I think considering whether a mixed-use application is appropriate there is something to consider as a part of this plan, with, again, some recommendations or guidelines that go along with that. So I think that addresses the 4 points in a little bit more detail, and we can go forward from there.
Anybody?
And again, if tonight you want this as an introduction and you want to take some time to digest the document a little bit more, we can do whatever you all want to do tonight works for us. If you think the document's going in the right direction, but you want some more time to digest it and you want to see another version of this, absolutely. We can do that, and we can be back to you in a month. I need to come back to you in a month with some other things anyway, so that we could definitely do that. So we're kind of looking for your direction as to how you want to proceed.
Well, since I went through and looked at some of these maps, and I had a few questions on them, I'm going to go ahead and ask them. On the landmark map, it doesn't look like we're considering American Hotel as part of the business park. Is there a reason for that?
Well, actually, technically speaking, I believe that American Hotel Register opted out of the park. So from a technical subdivision standpoint, it is part of the park, but from an association standpoint, I don't believe they are part members of that association. I think it's probably appropriate to add them back in just simply because the property was originally part of Continental Executive Park.
And doesn't the Park District land run all the way through the Deer Pass subdivision from the north end to the south end? It looks like there's a break on the south end.
It may be a graphic error or graphic issue just simply because of a space requirement. We can check it.
You mean the path?
It's a thin path.
Yeah.
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 But the map scale may not be big enough, so, well, we can take a look.
Straight.
Yeah.
John, could I just comment? This is one of the maps that said, is dated from November. We had made one comment about maybe the Village Hall should be one of the landmarks on the map, and we haven't seen that change yet. So if there's other things like that that you want to suggest, you know, I'm sure we can work with the village staff and get those added. But the Village Hall is one we had already commented on.
And on the subdivision map, number 30 indicates that it's Hawthorne Village Commons, and it looks like it's Big Bear and Little Bear Lake. I think it should be that other little green section up on 60, should it not?
It's a very large water-based development.
Yes.
No, you're right.
It's a floating development.
Well, Grosse Point's also not in Grosse Point. 24.
Or Grosse Point.
Oh, right.
Yeah, up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess it's number 5, where, is that CompUSA? Is that what that is?
Bradford?
Oh,
Number
that's-
5 is Home Depot, the former Expo, now Steinhoffel site. And that was based, I believe, on the subdivision of that property, or resub of that property.
So that's not part of the marketplace.
Well, it is, but it was a resub of Marketplace. We'll check that.
Seems like we're almost trying to confuse ourselves.
Yeah, that was the resub of that site, so.
Okay. And isn't Hawthorne Hills, haven't they removed the name Fashion from their name? Number 29-8.
They have, I guess the question would be, is that the name of the subdivision? So, if it's the name of the subdivision, that's why it's reflected there.
Country Club Estates.
Something else?
Yeah. Where is he?
On page 6, talks about the Route 45 corridor. Number 16, limit residential development west of the intersection of US 45 and Port Clinton Road. And weren't we considering residential development in the Oaks? No, I don't think, maybe we weren't, but the board was looking at it at one time.
Well, actually, we looked at it too in a senior housing development long time ago.
But this was, I think, apartments they were trying to convince the
Yeah.
village board to put in there. So I'm not sure if that,
It just shows.
I don't have any objection to it, but it's not consistent with what the board was looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim, because I remember, because it was kind of left vacant on the map. And that was one of my questions tonight, on where that one was going. Whether that was going to be considered for, a residential type development, or what was really going on with that property.
We are waiting for the developer to come back with a revised concept plan for that site. And that's where it is at this point. I don't know, they have some concerns about some construction standard questions that have to be answered yet. So I don't know where they are with regards to that.
Has that site been sold to the developer?
No, it would be, right now it's proposed to be developed as a partnership with Hamilton Partners and another company called Kinsey Development.
Okay, so so we're talking about basically what used to be Lycom's property, and then
Correct.
the Kelly
Kelly's
camp.
Kelly, right.
Are they does Lycom still own that?
No.
So they did sell.
They did sell.
Okay.
Was Hamilton on it?
Yes. Yeah,
Hamilton
Hamilton
owns
owns it. Hamilton owns it in partnership with another developer.
That and Kelly's, the old Kelly's camp?
Yep, yep, they control everything.
Okay.
I think my point was, if we're potentially considering residential there, do we want to leave statement number 16 in here? I guess that's my point.
One of the things the village board had recommended in its strategy planning sessions was kind of targeting as many environmentally concerned areas as possible in the village for preservation. I know this is one of the most sensitive areas in the village that, whatever language is developed is maybe it needs to be addressed somehow, that those areas be preserved, even if residential is allowed somehow, as much as possible.
But isn't the point of a comprehensive plan not necessarily what you're considering, but to put a vision as to what you should consider for your land use? And if we believe that the appropriate consideration of that land is the way it's described here, whether someone's come to us or not, I think is somewhat irrelevant.
True. I mean, it is a vision.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just something to
If
consider.
that's the vision, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, but
I didn't want particularly residential development to go there.
But it's not inconsistent with some of the things that have been going on both sides
Right.
of Route 45 in that stretch.
Yeah.
So, I guess, I don't know if you want to eliminate it as a potential, and this is starting to go that direction.
It's not a change, though. It's existing.
Right.
But it does say limit, it doesn't say that it's, excluded.
It's,
so it
yeah,
does
it doesn't
give
have that definitive
So
word.
it does
limit.
give the opportunity
Yeah, that's
to do something.
I suppose, yeah. If a brilliant idea came forward,
We'd think about it. Then we'd say no.
I think,
but those trees,
yeah,
those,
I know, I want to get to the trees,
yeah, those
because
trees are very important, and that's where the environmental issue.
All right.
that was one of the things I found with that site, was that you, in another section I was scrambling to find it, you talked about our comprehensive tree plan
Yeah.
that we're going to put in, and talking about historic trees.
Yep.
You won't find many more historic trees in Vernon Hills than you will in that section of
Agreed.
Right.
Vernon Hills, so
Right.
there's going to be some issues with
Well,
that, I
and
would think.
as you remember, when we did the Oaks of Vernon Hills development, we did carve out certain areas for preservation with regards to that development. We were trying to be sensitive, recognizing that there was a trade-off. We did lose some significant trees to preserve a larger grove of trees right along the road front.
Right.
So, and that, the concept plans that we've seen for that site have continued to maintain that, and in some respects have enhanced it, because the building, you're able to move the building plan a little bit more now. So,
Okay. Which map are we on?
Then I'm moving to the land use map. And on there, help me out differentiating between industrial warehouse and office as it concerns Corporate Woods and Continental Executive.
Right now, these are the existing land uses you have in the village. And it's something that we have made comments on, that maybe that these need to be refined more and maybe generalized a little bit more. And that would be one area where they'd be combined potentially, is those two types of uses, that maybe there isn't enough differentiation between them to consider them separate land use categories.
Is there a particular reason that one industrial warehouse section is in corporate, I guess that's Corporate Woods?
Yeah.
Is that one particular facility?
Well, I think it reflects, I'm thinking it's the Mitsubishi building out there that has a rather large component to it. Actually, we could add a couple more that I'm thinking about to reflect.
Right, that's
ZF
why I say I
Industries-
was a little confused about the differentiation.
Yeah, ZF Industries actually has fairly substantial warehousing and manufacturing or remanufacturing operations.
What about CDW?
CDW, large warehousing, no manufacturing. So, yep, good point.
See my point? I'm confused as to why we did it the way we did it there.
Maybe what we need to do is revisit that one a little bit more. And
Right. As far as
Yeah.
concerns the northeast corner, or the northeast corner of 60 and 21, I don't know if there's consideration maybe along there doing something like a river walk treatment. I don't know if the shoreline there is conducive to it or not.
yeah, it may very well be, or some kind of trail. There is floodplain that is along there that will prohibit any future development from occurring. But we've always talked about, is there a way to integrate it into the path system that's on the other side? So yeah, I think that's a detail that, while we may not necessarily be able to show it in this land use plan, it's something that we could comment on in the
Right.
dialogue. Yep.
And we've sort of, trying to find out where my comment fits in here. We talk about reuse of some of the commercial districts in the village. I'm wondering, and I recently read about somebody using
13, 14?
funds to revitalize some of the industrial section, although it's listed as office in our brochure here. I was wondering what percentage of Continental Executive Park and Corporate Woods, what percentage of those facilities are vacant now? Do we know that?
I don't know. I don't have a number. So, I know we have a couple of fairly large vacancies, former Allstate building, I think about 185,000 square feet. PNC, again, it's an office building. Former PNC WAMU building down near the high school is, for the most part, vacant, although they're receiving some state funding to remodel that. There's a couple of other larger buildings that are vacant in there, so it's a mix. We're actually seeing some people kicking the tires about coming back into the community and relocating here.
And I guess the question is, do we need an element to address that situation in our plan?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Do we need an element to address those situations?
You know, I don't know, and maybe, I don't know, Al or Jeremiah, maybe have you comment on that. I'm not sure that we do. I think we're in a good area where We do have development going on and/or reoccupying of buildings going on. It's just, it's reflective of the market right now, and it's slower. I mean, some of the smaller office buildings, the Rogers Office Park, for instance, which is adjacent to the Arbor Theater, they have a lot of vacancy in there right now. And that's just a function of the market right now. So, we haven't seen the buildings decline. We haven't had any type of code enforcement issues or the like where we're concerned about the overall conditions of those buildings. And eventually we believe it'll recover. It's just gonna be slow, so.
Page, can I follow up on that though before you? With regard to the village, in general, we're not really a new growth village anymore, because we don't have a lot of areas for new growth. It's more, I don't know if we're mature yet, but we're probably reaching that at some stage.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
In light of that, it seems that we almost downplay the need, as Jim is suggesting, to have, I guess, a plan for either, I don't know whether redevelopment is the right word, or maybe revitalization is a better word, of areas of the village that, you know, for instance, the mall is a huge presence in Vernon Hills, yet we talk repeatedly about the fact that, you know, the mall is probably not as competitive, certainly, as it was when it was built, or even when it was remodeled a number of years ago.
Right.
You know, similarly, we've got a variety of centers along Route 60. You know, the ones that don't have the big box in it are the ones that are doing right now very poorly. You know, the one where the Dominick's is, you know, and things like that. That, could we or should we, and obviously what I'm saying, you know, where I come out on that, have something in the plan that focuses on the need for those types of revitalization, and then that would also include, you know, various buildings. Because on one thing, it's great to say that we're not having code enforcement, but that's probably not the standard that we want to reach. We want to reach a higher standard than we're just not having code enforcement issues. So I don't know how you say that, because it's more, I guess, ephemeral than it is, you know, we want 60% retail, or we want to put a building here. But I think it's probably a more important going forward concern when you look at the land use is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and unfortunately, again, we're gonna have to tweak the land use plan, because we did actually identify several areas for potential redevelopment and reuse, and that needs to go back on the plan, and it's not here. I guess I look at it from the standpoint of our community is new enough so that our buildings are still,
They're not failing.
they're not failing, but more importantly is they are still state-of-the-art when it comes to the markets that we serve, or the people that want to locate here. So from the office park standpoint, I think we don't do the recruiting and everything like that typically of that, because we're more of an organization that works in partnership with the owners of the buildings and or the parks to try to bring people here. With regards to the retail area, I agree. I think, and we try to do our best with regards to, again, working with the individual property owners to reinvest in their property and to market those sites. I think, as you all know, over the last 18 months, we provided economic incentive agreements for 6 different projects, which for this village is unheard of. And that has been the impetus through what we term a strategic investment in these centers to allow them to maintain or in most instances enhance their overall marketability of those sites. So that's kind of what we've done. That's not stated in this plan. And it's, you know, and maybe what we need to do is reemphasize maybe something like that in the plan.
I mean, I think we might want to, I guess the phrase that I took most telling out, what you just said, is markets we serve. And I'm not, once again, because this is a vision plan, is it important to say it's markets we serve, or is it more important to say markets that we want to be serving in the village? And the example that I'll use, and I know that it's very divisive, is there is something down the road in Lincolnshire that's an after-dark entertainment location that we're sorely lacking in the village. And I would think that would be something that would be a market we would want to be able to serve here, rather than, you know, watch, you know, the sales tax you know, and well as the employment, drive down the road.
Yep.
So I don't know where we address those types of things, because they're not, I guess, specific. It's not like we say, you know, we want this restaurant in town. That's very concrete. It's more we want, I guess, a concept or a theory to be able to be, you know, reached here. You know, similar with that, when you talk about, and I wrote this down, just the question of aesthetics. I mean, at one time, the running joke was that for development, you know, was it Larry Lash would give someone, here's our sign ordinance, if you can meet it, we'll talk to you, if not, we won't, because we didn't have to go begging for people. Now, because the market's so much different, is there also an aesthetic concern that we want to make sure that we're reaching? I know that part of it is,
Yeah.
it's kind of, if you will, put through this, but, you know, the kind of the comments Scott was making earlier regarding this building we saw today, you know, my guess is that we were going to, quote unquote, build a new building today, it wouldn't have looked like the one we saw.
True.
Now, how that gets written, I don't really know. That's a whole different
You're just an
question.
idea guy.
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah.
It's the big picture.
I understand.
And since we're talking about my ideas, I'll give one other one. We don't have a historic landmark ordinance. Do we need one to preserve the museum?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it's something that we could look at, and yet, again, I think we have limited abilities to prohibit somebody from coming in and demolishing that building. I mean, if somebody said tomorrow we're coming in and doing this, we would be hard pressed to say no.
Tomorrow we would, yeah, but if we had a,
It's because we don't have an ordinance.
And it's a question. I don't know.
you know, similarly the gardens too, I mean, to the extent that they're, whatever they are.
I mean, we could add a comment in the plan if you wanted to explore that. I don't have a lot of experience with regards to that, so, nor does this community,
No, because, right,
with one historic building.
not old enough.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got that silo.
They got
We've
that
got that
silo,
silo.
that's right.
That's right.
It won't go away.
Actually, the silo's not necessarily historic either, believe it or
But we
not.
think,
Not
it is.
anymore.
But we think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's,
Hey,
It's a weapon.
yeah, I'm sorry, Jim, you were saying something else and I broke in?
Okay, that's all right. On page 15, talking about the VHAC site, are there still school sites
yes.
there?
Yep. Yeah, sure are. In fact, the fields 5 and 6, which are the girls' softball fields, and everything on that south side of the entrance road is all owned by Lincolnshire Elementary District, Lincolnshire Rewards Elementary District. I think it's in District 70, I believe.
No.
I don't have my map, so.
103 maybe?
103,
Yeah,
you're right.
103.
So, yep, that is a site that is long-term owned by them, as is the site on the west side of Fairway, which is owned by the Stevenson. So,
I just cut in.
Yes.
Okay. John, while he's still meandering through there, back to page 10, on the land use plan. The only objection I have is to the verbiage. Let me find it again. Where'd it go? Okay. Yes, I wrote. I lost it again. It's about you saying that the price of housing is maintained. Okay. It should be noted that while housing values have maintained or continued to increase
yep,
in all areas of the village,
there may be some old language there.
can I find that area, please?
Increased? According to my tax bill, maybe.
That's very true.
That's about it.
Yep.
So I thought that kind of jumped out at me.
Okay. Yep.
Um,
Good point.
And then, again, one more thing I wanted to add is, under the sustainability,
Yep.
you talked about LEED certification, and I would hate to tie the hands of any development or person who wants to put a building up saying that they have to be LEED certified.
Right.
In any future, you know, whatever we have, ordinances or anything, because I mean, as wonderful an idea as it is, it can be cost prohibitive for a lot of people, and you don't wanna,
Right.
we don't wanna discourage people from coming in just because they have to be LEED certified, so, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to have, but it's also, it's usually expensive.
Well, and LEED is gonna eventually, kind of morph into an overall mandate. So, LEED is not going to be what it is today. It's going to change dramatically.
Okay. Yep.
And it's not like we're doing what Evanston is doing, where we mandate everyone that comes in have to
No.
be. This is just a
It's
guideline,
Encouraging,
yeah.
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 I wanna move on with the same section that Jim was talking about on page 10. In the areas where the homes are getting to be 40 and 50 years old, those homes are gonna start to be modified more and more. And if there's something that we can say in here that is gonna address the fact that those homes and those properties are gonna be modified and become more unique than they once were as development-oriented homes. Specifically Deer Path in that area, I'm starting to see that those homes are starting to become modified. And I see that as a good thing moving forward. It's talking about in here, Vernon Hills will experience it is unlikely that Vernon Hills will experience the vulcanization issues. I agree with that. I don't think there's gonna be tear downs, you know, especially in those areas, but I think that those properties are gonna be modified. And, I don't know if you wanna say encourage it, but to say welcome, maybe, modifications to homes. If it meets the ordinance and there aren't too many variations and it isn't detrimental to, you know, surrounding property owners. Because it could create a very custom environment or a much more custom environment. And that's the kind of environments that you see in a lot of the North Shore communities, even the ones that are more dense with smaller lots, that the homes are unique. And that makes it very appealing.
Yeah, we'll figure something out on some language there, I think, so.
Fire district?
I think I understand what you're saying.
Ready, John?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, on the fire protection district maps, is there a difference between the Libertyville Fire Protection District and the Village of Libertyville Fire Department?
Yes. In short, yes. The fire department is directly serving only those parts that are incorporated into the village, whereas the fire protection district, the services are provided by the fire department, but they're paid for by the residents in unincorporated areas. So they actually have a separate fire station that is designated for the Libertyville Fire Protection District outside the fire department. Although all of them will service you, but they are separate governmental entities in the way they function.
All right. The comment I have on the map overall, in this nice bright light, it's easy to read, but at home, I could not distinguish between the colors because they were too much alike.
So you want us to get you some brighter light bulbs at home?
No. I mean, the orange and the orange for Libertyville were so much alike, I couldn't tell the difference on the map, let alone.
Okay.
Shoot, and I was gonna say that I thought this was great. You know, I was gonna say that I really liked these maps. I thought that they were easy to read, and I love the tagging of the areas.
The others were fine. This one was too many of the orange color in here.
We were going to go with multiple shades of red, but even I couldn't read those, so.
Oh, and on the library district is even worse.
Okay. We'll work on
Just
that.
use some
There's
color.
gonna be one, that's the one I would affiliate.
And to correct the Fremont, spelling of the Fremont Library.
Oh.
Part of it, we would, like, say, we would work with your GIS staff, we would print some of the maps, and our printer would. Our printer would read certain colors and codes one way, and then we'd send it over to your GIS department, and then when he'd send it back, we'd look and go, well, how did that happen? It's just the way they read with a printer, so when you get down to the final document, we'll have to definitely make sure that we coordinate that with whichever printer it comes out on.
And now a question on, John, on your sustainability. In there, you talked about using hybrid vehicles.
Yep.
Which depend on batteries to operate. And I'm not yet convinced, and I don't know if there are any studies yet that say that the eventual disposition of those batteries is any safer or any less damaging to the environment than what fossil fuels are to burn.
Understand, the hybrid or low emission vehicles is a transitional type of technology that at some point will take us from fossil fuel burning vehicles to something that doesn't emit the pollution and the like, whatever that is, whether it's compressed natural gas or all batteries or some other form of propulsion.
Right.
Nuclear, no, I know.
The point I'm making is I just don't know if we're replacing one evil with another evil that's of a different nature. The same thing with power. I mean, we're talking about moving from coal to nuclear, and now we got nuclear waste to deal with, so, and it's sitting on our lakefront water supply, so, you know, we've got various things to weigh there.
Well, and I guess you could make also the argument of biodiesel, you know, or biofuels in general, and does it take more energy to produce it than they actually provide us?
Mm-hmm. That's my only point on the.
This is what the technology is today, moving forward. So, understand.
And then you talked about, I think with road pavement, you talked about that having permeable surfaces.
Mm-hmm, right.
Can you give an example?
I can't, because we don't do a lot of it around here at this point. I mean, it's.
I was gonna say, if you're talking about using brickwork,
Scott and I
that
were
doesn't work around here.
Well, Scott and I were talking about that today, and it's, you know, it's a way to reduce the stormwater runoff. It's a way to recharge groundwater, and finding applications that work in this climate are a challenge right now. Can they be done? Yes, but with certain limitations. But I cannot give you an example up here right now.
Okay.
A recent example of that would be US Cellular Field. They just did a whole parking lot in permeable pavers that allows, it made up for all of the stormwater they would have to provide, detention they would have to provide for this new parking lot to be paved, which is permeable pavers. There's a lot of, it's a growth industry right now in terms of engineering and things of that nature.
So it's a brickwork?
There are brick pavers made by Unilock. There are porous concrete products coming out now also that are being made in some
Is
porous.
this a lot that's used in the winter?
Yes.
These are lots that are designed to minimize or eliminate the need for detention in a city development. I mean, the city requires you to control your water.
Right, conceptually, I don't have a problem with it. I just know in the winter, the brickwork does not work around here as it exists today.
It can and it does. It can and it does. It just has to be done properly. The substrates have to be created properly. It's very expensive. But it can be done properly, it is done properly all the time now, because that is the only way certain properties can be developed, because there's no other way besides very large underground tanks to store the stormwater and release it at a rate that it has to be released. That is a huge element of development in the city of Chicago right now. And it's one of the few ways to do it, because permeable concrete, it has not been proven that it works well in our environment, as John was saying.
They've done some tests at the Morton Arboretum with permeable pavers near vegetation, and from the research they're doing, it seems to be working very well. It helps to recharge the not wells, but the landscaping in that area. One of the problems that's been faced is, as you mentioned about reducing the stormwater requirements, Lake County Stormwater Management Agency will let you use them, but you get no credit on reducing the size of your detention facility. So if you do spend the money, there's really not that much of an incentive. I think the more that villages start to put policies in place that they'd like to explore this, hopefully in the future we'll get Lake County Stormwater Management to make some adjustments, but I don't think it's going to be in the near term.
Right.
Okay, under transportation, page 24, provision of, number 7, provision of, for construction of local roads, including Phillip Road, to allow residents to access neighborhoods of the village. Isn't Phillip Road complete, done? We're not gonna do anything further
Yeah,
there?
I need to modify that, you're right.
And number 15, consideration access arrangement should be given to possible extension of Atrium Way westerly to Aspen Drive. Can that happen anymore with the library there?
Hmm.
So that needs to go too. Then Route 83 from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, additional turn lanes at specific intersections, isn't that complete?
I'm sorry, which one again?
This, keep going, this next
Yeah,
sentence.
okay, right.
Route 83. It's already 4 lanes.
Well, no, this is saying add an additional lane in each direction. That's a 6-lane crossing, plus turn lanes. So that's what that's saying.
And I think that needs
No,
to
no,
be
no.
in numbers.
Still on 15, not 16. You talking about 16?
Oh, I
I'm
went
talking
to
about
16.
15.
The last sentence of 15.
Last sentence of 15, yes.
True.
So it looks like 15 could go.
I think that was a strikeout that words didn't edit out when it was one of the original goals in the older plan that didn't get struck out, right? So,
And while you did put in widen Route 66 lanes, I think a more important thing to do would be to increase the cross-section of Route 21 from Marketplace north to the Ring Road. That is constantly congested there, headed north.
Right.
At Christmas, it was ridiculous.
Always is.
'Tis the season.
Yeah.
And we don't address that situation at all.
Okay.
The other thing, I don't know, I didn't see you mention it, but I think there should be something about a completion of a bike/walkway all along Route 45 from Town Center to Grosse Pointe.
That is in the bike path plan, but we can definitely emphasize it if you'd like. But it's in the bike path plan.
Okay. Is that later? I didn't get
No,
that
it's
part there.
it's the bike
Oh,
path. It's
separate.
not in here.
It's not in here.
It's the separate plan, right? In fact, we have a. Yeah. Okay.
I think it should be in here somewhere. And on page 25, you talk about collector roads. you added Georgetown Way,
Yep.
and the reason for that being?
Well, it's a collector road within that development. So,
And Evergreen Road out here wouldn't be considered a collector road then?
Should be.
yep, should.
Bless you.
Allergic to everything.
And then there's the 45 comment we also made.
Yes. Yeah, we need to add 45, Route 45 under number 21.
Mhm.
Okay.
Which one? 45? Oh, yeah.
I didn't think they heard that.
That's as far as I got, so I'm out of gas now.
That's all you did?
Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Thank you for your comments. Other thoughts?
Well, I guess then with the comments is the appropriate thing to bring it back then probably?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
All right. Okay.
Do we need to, and you mentioned in here something about pace bus service.
Yep.
And I know they recently cut back on routes in the village.
Ebbs and comes and goes, honestly, based on use. And the formulas that PACE attributes to paying for routes.
Well,
So,
would they consider, or would the businesses in town consider bus service from the metro station to Hawthorne and to the business parks?
I'm not sure that the businesses would, and the bus service, they've had bus service from the train station to some of the businesses, but the ridership and/or the cost has been such that they've canceled it almost as quickly as it
Is there,
started.
I noticed, and they always throw these huge, humongous buses. Why do they not have smaller buses for this type of service?
I truly don't know. I mean, I know of, there's several stations along the north line where they have the smaller buses that serve Abbott. And they come in, they get into the Lake Forest or Lake Bluff train stations. Glenview has shuttle service from their train station, I believe, to Kraft and some of the larger users down there. And they use a smaller size bus. Some other places use school buses. It all depends on ridership, number one, and how much it costs. So,
And some of those are sponsored by those businesses and
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
New Trier High School has a bus that picks up teachers that live in the city of Chicago, right at the stop there also for,
well, Conway Park and Lake Forest has their own bus that they run that's sponsored by the park association to bring people to the corporate headquarters, and they run a series of shuttles to downtown Lake Forest and to the west side train station. So.
Are cars allowed to park overnight at the train station?
You can make those arrangements, absolutely. You just have to pay for the parking, and then we have certain spaces where overnight is specifically designated.
So for instance, if you're spending a weekend downtown or something, you want to drive to the train station and park there for a couple days
You can do that. You just have to pay for the parking. You have to have the tickets
on your dash?
On your dash, right.
Oh, and you buy those?
You can buy them at the machine, I believe. We also suggest, we suggest that you contact the police department too, just to let them know. So,
Do they even have weekend service on this line?
no.
Not
weekend
during the
service.
weekend.
Right.
But he said staying overnight on Friday to
If you
Monday.
left Friday,
or something.
you
Have to come
could
back
do it
Monday.
Yeah,
Right.
just wondering.
Yeah, we have some limited spaces adjacent, it's at the entrance on, I believe, the right-hand side adjacent to the Martin property. We have 6 or 7 spaces right at that location
Yep.
designated for that type of use. So. Okay, what we can do is, I'll work with, Al and Jeremiah on these modifications. We'll work on the maps, and we'll put together another document, and we'll have it to you. We'll see you guys probably next month sometime.
Okay.
And the like. So if you want to leave your books here, that would be great. Lisa would be very happy, and leave me whatever else you want to leave me at the same time. that would be wonderful. If you want to take them with you, you're absolutely welcome to do that. So,
I have 3 more sections to finish.
okay.
Okay,
Whatever changes or send them to me or email them or call me
Okay.
or whatever it is.
then we have a approval of the minutes from the October 19th, 2011 meeting. We need a second for that, unless there's any comments.
Of course I have a comment.
Okay,
On page 10, did you want to make note on? On page 10, where it's tabulating the vote, although the verbiage is correct, it says commission voted 4-2 to recommend approval. Above where it counts the votes, it says 6 voted yes.
Yep.
yep, right.
And then,
Generally let Lisa work with the big numbers.
on page 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eighth speaker down says it's me, but I didn't say that. So I don't know who did, but it wasn't me.
We'll check it.
Eight.
This sounds like you, actually, Hal.
Might be, it's right, it's kind of in the middle of the page on page 8, where it says,
Oh,
well, they
no,
could also be a limited partnership.
Yeah, I think it is you, Jim.
Well, you know, some of it
Because-
sounded like me, but then
Yeah. You don't use the term dancing around?
I think I've heard him use that word before, dancing
Yeah.
around, that
I
term. In multiple ways, Jim.
You know what, how about if we check it and,
Whatever it is, it is.
yeah,
I probably said it could be a limited partnership,
I think you did.
but then,
'Cause I remember the discussion. You know,
but then
okay.
then the next statement, no, that is a limited liability partnership. That's somebody else talking.
All right, we'll check.
That might be me, I don't know.
Dancing around is definitely a term you would use.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, yeah, I did say that.
What else you got?
Okay,
I
so we
think that
need,
was, on page 5, second comment by Goodrich. The second part of the
Many.
first line, we don't expect to see many 21-year-olds.
right,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, so subject to those
Great.
changes, do we need a second?
A second.
We can do by acclamation, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. We have nothing else.
Correct. I have just one thing real quick.
Sure.
I just want to make sure everybody understands, and I'm sure how you know this from some of your municipal clients, and Jim, you probably know it from the Park District. State law changed as of the first of the year, and it now requires any person that is a member of a public body, and that's boards, bureaus, committees, commissions, et cetera, has to go through Open Meetings Act training. It's required by the state. Basically, what it says is that state law has now changed that requires everybody to go through this training, and you have to provide a certification from the state that says you've actually gone through the training. You can do it online, in the comfort of your own home if you'd like, but you have to go through the training, and it's 62 questions or whatever it is, and I think you can start and stop as you go through it. But you create an account, you have your own file, you read all the stuff, you then answer little quizzes as you go through it, et cetera, et cetera. So you the real key for me is that you have to provide a certificate saying you've done it, and I need to keep that on file. Jim, I know you'll have to do it as a part of the park board, and
You know.
I'm sure you do.
Do I have to do it for you too?
No,
I
only
just-
once.
just
I
once?
just need a
Just
copy
once,
of
okay.
your,
Thank you.
Why don't you have Lisa send out, when she,
I will
just
send
the
you the
link,
link.
and just do it that way?
Yeah, I'll send everybody the link, and if you
Does
have
this
questions.
have to be completed by a certain time?
End of the year.
Friday,
You have till the end of 2012 to do it.
Exactly.
yeah.
So I'll be
You're
doing it about
December-
December 20th.
You do it on Black
Oh, you're
Friday.
gonna be early. Okay.
So, so you'll see that information come to us, and everybody's got to do it. I've done it, and
Yeah.
You just gotta park aside a couple hours to do it, so. It's cumulative. I'm a slow reader,
Okay.
so. Other than
And
that,
who- does some,
go ahead.
when we print our certificate,
Send
somebody,
it to me.
you're right, but somebody is keeping score or tabs on this thing? You said you could answer 64 questions and,
You have to pass the quiz, whatever that is.
Right.
In this state, I don't know what the passing score is, but I'm sure no one on this commission will have a problem.
You tie your shoes
So,
again and
yeah.
then you win.
And I think it's probably like open book too, so, I just need a copy of your
Right.
certificate whenever you're done. So let me know if you run into any problems, or if you wanna come over here and we can set you up in the hall here and, set you at a workstation if you'd like, whatever you want. I'm happy to help, so I just can't take it for you, so.
Okay.
And then, there's a number of things that are brewing that you may see some of the beginnings of next month. We're meeting with the mall on Friday to talk about what they're doing and moving forward again, and I think they're for real this time, so, so we'll see. So, that's kind of where we are at this point.
Okay.
Anything you guys want to add? Okay.
All right.
oh, but,
Uh-huh.
you know, they asked for additional feedback about what we wanted to see at the northeast corner of 60 and 21. Did anybody else have any suggestions?
You're-
Scott?
If you're okay with the mixed-use direction, we can do that?
I think that's, leaves it open
Yeah.
for opportunity.
It's a tough parcel.
True.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So we have a standing motion to adjourn. We need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that one? Okay, we're adjourned. Good night.
Yeah, if you want to leave your